we're going to serve people in an unbelievable way. We're going to utilize technology in an unbelievable way.
Yeah.
And also we're going to actually make sure this thing is profitable, and that we were talking about this earlier. Red light, green light, red light, green light. Do we need to slow down? Do we need to hire more people? Do we need more leads? Do we need more salespeople? Like, what is the actual problem?
This is the Better Life Podcast, where we talk about real estate investing, building wealth, and all in all living a better life. My name is Brendan Turner, and I've spent my life investing in real estate to achieve financial freedom. And alongside my co-host, Mr. Cam Cathcart, we want to help you do the same. On the show, you're going to hear from world-class guests who have been handpicked to help you level up your investing, your leadership, your goals, your habits, and more to become the very best version of yourself. So join us as we explore the habits, the actions, the beliefs that it takes to build wealth through real estate investing without losing your soul. This is the Better Life Podcast with Brandon Turner and
Cam Cathcart.
Cam Cathcart. What's up, dude?
Not much, man. How are you doing?
You know, I'm doing well. I've got a baby on the way, which by the time this episode airs, I'm sure the baby will be out already, but I got a baby on the way. So we're gearing up for that. I've got so many baby furniture things around every room of my house.
Really?
Just everywhere. We're just like stocking up. My wife's in like, is it nesting? Does that mean to say? She's like in nesting mode. She's like, we got to get everything done. So we are getting everything done. We just got furniture delivered yesterday, and yeah, it's been a wild ride.
When is Heather due?
Officially just due December 21st, or 20th. But our last couple of kids, you know, they came 3 weeks early. So
so it could be any day.
It could be any day. It could be. So we're excited. I'm excited. But, you know, I'm also excited about today's episode because we have a good friend of mine, Mr. Nathan Brooks, who was a four-peater on Bigger Pockets. One of my favorite guests we had there. Brought him over here. Got to hear a lot of stuff that I don't remember him ever saying and talking about on Bigger Pockets. We get to talk about today here around his story, around bankruptcy. We talk about partnerships, and we'd spent a lot of time talking about partnerships.
We did.
It's so valuable.
Super valuable to hear how he's had some that didn't go well.
Yeah.
And now he has ones that are going incredible.
Yeah. And we talk about what's the difference? How do you find a good partner? How do you avoid a bad partnership? What should you do when you're setting it up? All that good stuff and more. We also talk a little bit about mentors. Like, how do you find a good mentor? Somebody to teach you, train you, to build you up, what to do, what not to do. And we talk about no money down. We have a good conversation about no money down. And we also talked about how you can like potentially 5 or 10x your cash flow by understanding a little term called ROE. And I even give you a free resource later you can go download to help you figure that out. So
yeah,
that and more today. But before we get to that, let's get to today's show sponsor. This episode is brought to you by our friends at Turbo Tenant and Ballpoint Marketing. These two companies are big supporters of the show, and they know how to work with real estate investors and help real estate investors grow their businesses. So be sure to stay tuned to hear how you can get, discounts and free stuff from them both. And as you probably know, all the profits from the show go to charities of the guest choosing. So when you listen to the sponsors on the show and you work with these hand-chosen by me sponsors, you're actually doing good for the world. Now let's get to the show. Partnerships. Let's pause there for a minute and talk about I know you use a lot of partnerships. You've had a lot of, you still do today. I know you've had a lot. What went wrong with you choosing that partner? Like, what do you do differently now? What should people do? How should we look at partnerships and JVs when it comes to real estate investing?
Yes. So I'm on my 4th or 5th iteration of the understanding of what partnership looks like. And I think early on, I saw somebody post in a group a few days ago, who wants to be a partner? I'm doing this, and all these people are like, sign me up. Where do I get in your DMs? And I'm like, oh, this is great. This is about to be like, and in reality, we didn't make it clear. What is the business? What is its purpose? I'm not just like bringing in my buddy because we're bros and we're going to do something. And so for me now, it's what is the clear vision first? So what are we actually solving? What problem? And then next, what are the things that I'm really great at and that I'm actually committed to doing? Because how often in partnership do you actually end up with people who don't do anything or don't solve the problems that you want to? And then, of course, what is the actual end result? And are we building something? Well, we were talking about this. So I just started the first company ever with the intention to sell it.
Yep.
So we have a lending company. Yep. I have a goal to build it to $100 million and exit that and sell it. And so the lending company for the first time was the company that we said, we are building it to sell it. And we're going to give incredible service. We're built for investors because that's my DNA and what I've spent the last, almost 20 years figuring out. And then we intentionally brought in people that we knew were incredible at the things that I wasn't incredible, and then making space for them to actually operate and have autonomy to do the thing that they're being asked to do.
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, I think majority of people make the mistake when they're bringing on a partnership, whether it's real estate or business or whatever. They make that mistake of going, that person's in my world, like they're available. Let's go. They have a pulse.
Yes.
Let's bring them in. I've done this over and over and over and over, and almost every time it doesn't work.
It doesn't work.
Yeah.
And you know what? I really like both of you guys, right? And how often when, especially early on, and even, I'm probably still guilty of this sometimes too, because I was fired from interviewing and hiring people in my old turnkey company because they said, Nathan, you love everyone.
Yeah.
There's nobody that you're like, no.
Yeah.
We're not hiring.
My team said the exact same thing to me the other day. They're like, you can't talk to me. You love everybody. And I'm like, they're like, name one person you don't like. And I'm like, well, I mean, there's a lot of them. I'm sure. Yeah. Yeah, like
think about all those people.
Yeah, there's a lot of people I don't like.
So I also, the other thing about partnerships, where I know some people who say, like, I don't do partnerships. And there's something to be said about that. But I also, and the reason I say that is because you have the full control of the destiny of the thing that you're building. However, I think there's something incredibly powerful about having a couple people with the same mission, the same understanding of the vision, as long as you're actually united in that. And then understanding who's really incredible at what.
Yeah.
And I pick a word every year, and this year, the word has been focus. And this coming year, 2025, it's lead, and then like parentheses, leadership. And it's not just
you should get a shirt that says Urship. That's a great, that's a good company name, like Urship LLC. And everyone's like, what does that mean? You're like
lead.
Yeah, lead. That's great.
So, and I keep explaining it like that too. He's like lead Urship. But there's a difference between leading and leadership. And then also for me, it was the reminder of saying, hey, Nathan, you need to lead and you need to be a great leader, but you also have to create space. Like, leaders don't just come in your business. This is not how this works. You have to create space for a leader. They have to have a clear understanding of what their actual roles and responsibilities are, and what are the things that they actually can do in their area of operation. And then they need time to actually figure out how to do it. And in creating the actual DNA and a culture that is okay, that, hey, you're going to make mistakes. I'm going to make mistakes. We're going to learn and have an open conversation and work together to solve the problem.
Yeah. And
then come back to what's the big vision of this thing and where are we in it?
Cam, what's your thoughts on partnerships? Because you and Lexi own your company together. So it's a partnership, but it's a marriage, so it doesn't count.
Honestly, like within our real estate company, we love owning everything ourselves because we just make more money.
Yeah.
But
could you triple by having somebody take half? Like that, right? Like, is that actually true? I like to push people on that question.
Is that actually true?
Will you make more money on your own than if you bring in somebody else?
Yeah, potentially.
Why?
Yeah. I mean, but they've got to be great at what they do. And that's the hardest thing I'm not good at
I'm not saying you're wrong.
Because I'm really, really bad at what you said, where it's like, hey, if I like this person, they seem like they'd be fun to go grab a beer with, like I want to work with them.
Yeah.
And typically I'm super bad at hiring because I hire people a lot of times that are like me.
Yep.
I would hate to work for me. I would hate to have an employee that is me, I guess is what I'm trying to say, because I'm a visionary. I'm off in la land. Like, I don't do the X's and O's, and I have a really bad problem like hiring and discerning, like, is this person going to do X? So honestly, like, our best employee, a couple of our best employees are people that I wouldn't want to just go hang out with because they're so different from me.
Yeah.
And so I have a really bad time with hiring people. The disc has helped a lot. I use a disc for hiring everything, but
me too. And the other thing I found is over time, so I have that high visionary, high D, high I, but over time, I've watched that I like drop on disc. So if people are disc, nerds, DIS.
Yeah. Can you explain it real quick for those who have never heard disc before?
D is like drive. That's like the captain of the ship, and the higher the D, the more you want to be in power. And so like, if there's not a big person in charge, I will take over. That's just. And then I is people. So high I is you love people, Low I is like, I don't need that, or I don't, I need to go back in my shell and be a hermit. S is stabilizing. So if you want, somebody doing administrative tasks, you want somebody higher S. And obviously a lot of visionary type people are not, because they don't see those things. And then C is the cautiousness. So it's like, you want somebody high C who's doing repetitive tasks. They're going to do them the same way over and over and over and over and over. And so what I realized was, hey, if I actually utilize a thing where I obsess about anything that I really am into, then I can obsess about how we actually go and hire.
Yeah.
And so, for instance, now we don't hire anybody without a job description. We don't hire anybody without roles and responsibilities. We don't hire anybody without a 90-day onboard and training plan.
Yeah, well, 100%. This thing has been fascinating to watch. I know the podcast I did with you and Lexi back before you were co-host on the show. We talked a lot about DISC and how you use that to even communicate with sellers, because everyone's got a different way of doing that. But yeah, when I think of like partnerships, when I started Open Door Capital, a lot of people don't know the story, but I'll share it just real briefly. Originally, right now it's Brian Murray is my partner, who wrote Crushing It in Apartments and Commercial Real Estate, Multifamily Millionaire. He's got thousands of units of his own. So it's Ryan Murdoch, who a lot of people know Ryan Murdoch. He's a rock star. And then it's me. And then we have Walker Meadows, who's our CEO, and he runs the whole company. That's not how it started. It was me, Ryan, and a buddy of ours, who is a great dude. I love him. I won't say his name here just because I'm going to then say some stuff that didn't work out. But love the dude. Still to this day, love him. He was a wholesaler, does 100 deals a year. It was not Cam. But it was like a wholesaler that I love. And it was me, Ryan, and this dude sitting on my front porch when we dreamed up a lot of Open Door Capital. And we said, okay, let's do it together. Third. And that's what we did. We said, you're a third, I'm a third, you're a third. Let's build this syndication business.
Right.
And I was like, all right, let's go. And I was like, I'm the visionary and I'm like going to raise the capital. And the one guy was going to go and get all the leads for the mobile home parks. And Ryan was going to run ops and run the organization. And it just, within the first month, we realized the guy doing 100 flips or wholesales a year had zero time, desire, effort, like into my business, because he was trying to keep his business afloat. And I was like, oh no, he is 30% of my company. And it was such a stupid mistake of like, why? It's like, I literally like went to a bar, found a girl. I was like, hey, you got hair. Let's get married. Like, it was like, you're single. Let's get married. And we just got married the first day. I have made that mistake numerous times. But with Brian, then later on, it was more like, okay, we made the mistake. We backed off. We renegotiated with this dude and basically not kicked him out, but essentially just said, hey, this isn't going to work. Like we have different agendas, different lives, different goals, different needs. Like, anyway, and then it was like, well, what do we need? And that's when we talked to Brian Murray and we realized we had a list of what we needed. We brought Brian in and that was the best thing we ever did. And when it goes to the question I asked you about, could you do more with the partners? Because this is the logic, is Brian didn't take quite half the company, but he took about a third of the equity at Open Door Capital. And I had a lot of hesitation around that. Like, do I want to give away another third to somebody else? And I'm like, the part of me saying I would make more on my own, then ask the question, wait, if I had Brian freaking Murray on my team, could I do 30% more?
Yeah.
And then it was like,
or 50%.
Or 50% more, or
100%.
We did 10 times more with Brian than we'd ever done without him. Now, again, that's maybe not true in your business because you have a different business than I do.
But I think it is. I think it was just, I'd have to find
the right person. Yeah.
Because I do think that, like, it would have to be somebody that's a high D.
Yeah.
I'm a super high D, super high I, very low S&C. But then we'd have to like delegate parts of our business, because then we would get in fights if brought on a partner that was both high Ds. Like, you own the ops of our business and I own the acquisitions part. So, because I'm really great at acquisitions. But I don't have a lot of time to invest into acquisitions because I'm running everything right now. And so it could, I think that there's probably a way to set up some form of phantom equity agreement. Yeah. Like, especially right now, because we've already established ourselves, where then over time, if certain metrics are hit, then you get equity.
I mean, that's how
bring somebody in.
That's how law firms do it, right? Is you earn partnership over
and then you buy in,
over a long period of time, and you buy in. And so, like, they figured it out, but like stupid people like me are just like third, let's just go. Like
I've only done that 10
yeah,
times.
yeah. I've done it over and over and over. It's like, you just having beers with somebody and you're like, let's just build a partnership.
Well, it's fun to work with friends.
It is.
And like, if we were sitting here, like, you're going to do this,
yeah,
this, I'm going to do this. Like, it would feel really
we
great.
probably would have already said yes.
Yeah. Because we're all, but that's when like, that's why our experience now, we can tell people listening is like, just slow down.
Slow down.
It's okay to have those dreams and it might work out great. Me and Ryan Murdoch worked out great. We're still partners today.
By the way, what you just said is actually like ... Write this down.
Yeah. Slow down. Yeah.
And you know, how many times are there things where you're like, we're going so fast.
Yeah.
You're on the roller coaster and I'm preaching to the choir here, but slow down. Like,
yeah.
Guess what? It's going to be okay. Slow down. Because how many times when you did actually slow down, now you actually performed better.
Yeah.
Because you actually took a breath.
Yep. And you can make better decisions. Like, for example, with the equity, I mean, equity is a big deal with partnerships. The difference between 10%, 20%, 30%, when we're talking real estate, which is millions of dollars, like I put more work into picking out my breakfast than I did dishing out equity at Open Door Capital. Like, right? Like that's like, it's like, if I was consulting myself, I'd be like, so who did you talk with about divvying up equity?
Yeah.
Who did you talk with another real estate investor who's been in your shoes? No, we just decided over drinks,
silence,
watching the sunset. Yeah. It's like when you slow down, you can start saying, well, what do I need to do? And then you can go to ChatGPT and be like, here, figure out like, where are the holes in my plan? Like walk me through all the mistakes that I might be making in this situation. Like even that, you would illuminate so much like, oh yeah, I didn't even think about that one. Oh, what happens if somebody dies? Oh, what happens if they get divorced? Like all those questions about partnerships.
You know who did? So Tarl and I were going to start a business together. And this is such, Tarl's one of my best friends, and he went so slow. And it was so good for the business because we ended up like, hey, the roles that I need to do to be a part of this business didn't make sense because I was supposed to be traveling all over the United States. And I'm like, I live in Hawaii. I'm not going to do that to my family. Yeah. It didn't work out. But if it was up to me, we would have started on day one and I would hate my life versus Tarl took 6 months and we would have meeting after meeting. We had an EOS coach come in of like, what are your roles? What are your responsibilities? What does it look like exactly? And at the time I was like, this is stupid. Let's just go buy houses. And it was so smart, but Tarl's an incredible operator.
That's and he's been through bad partnerships over and over and over. I mean, Tarl and I are partners on the Maui Masterclass. I've seen how Tarl operates and he does it slow on purpose for a good reason.
It was brilliant. It was such a great learning experience for me of like, oh, this is what starting a partnership really looks like versus me, because I'm the high D&I, like, oh, let's sign the paperwork and let's go run 100 miles an hour. So,
all right. I want to move back to your story, but before I do want to mention one thing. You said you're building this lending business to sell, and I think that's such a phenomenal concept that most of us, especially in real estate, we don't think that way because you can't really sell a real estate business per se. Like it's not really a thing that we do in our world, but you can treat it like you are. There's a great book. Have you read John Warrillow's Built to Sell?
Yes.
Yeah. So like that whole book is like, how do you build a company as if you're going to sell it? You don't have to sell it. Build it as if you're going to.
Yes. And so I know a few real estate businesses that have sold, but it was like 3, 4, 5 million.
Yeah.
Right. I don't know anything that sold at a high multiple with a big number, with an 8, 9, 10 figure number. And so instead, my question to myself was, well, how do we make enough impact for people? How do we have a clear enough brand and a clear enough, like, I love the marketing and I love the like branding side of things. And the other thing I've been really obsessed about lately is copy. So like, how am I actually writing and talking and communicating this thing that we're doing?
Yeah.
And then how do we actually serve it in a big way? And so that's why when we first started doing that, working on that company, it's like, no, we're going to work backwards into what this actually looks like. How many loans, how much money in revenue, what's a multiple, who are the people? So we had all of those conversations.
You have partners on that business?
I do have partners on the business.
So how did you find the partners and what did you do differently that time than if we go back to your beginning of your story of just meeting a guy at a Denny's or whatever it was? Like,
well, it's not much different.
That's how it works out better.
The cool part, it was funny as I was sitting here thinking about it. So I brought in Kia, who's our COO, and she's amazing. So we've been in business together for some time. And so bringing her into operations was a huge deal. And then Jeremy, our other partner, who had been doing loans for 20 years. And so I wouldn't say that we didn't have a lot of bumps in the beginning, but I do believe we actually have the right people now. It was a matter of, we missed a few of those steps of slowing down a little bit on the front end. And also because I've been working on this for 2 years, trying to find, and this third iteration of this problem. And so I'm crushing it on generating leads online. We have an incredible product, and it was like we were jamming so many leads into a system that wasn't ready for it. And so I had this need to solve the problem. And so I should have slowed down. I mean, that's the truth, is I should have slowed down, and I should have taken more time. I did take more time than I had before. And we did a better job of defining those things. But thankfully, we're in an incredible place now.
I think that about like the Better Life Tribe. Like a lot of people listening to this podcast right now are members of the Better Life Tribe, or were members of the Better Life Tribe. And I can say, like, we launched with 700 members, and we just went so fast and so big. And then things sometimes didn't work, and some people got confused. And then it was like they thought they were signing up for one thing and got something else. So like the danger of going too fast like that is what happened to me and what happened to you. It's like your customer service then drops, your expectations drop, like people get more frustrated. And so again, it goes back to slow down. Like,
yes. Well, I'll give you one more example. So I have a new partnership with a guy named Trey, and
I love Trey.
Trey's amazing.
He's in the 50.
Yeah, Trey Stone. He's a stud.
Yeah.
So Trey spent 20 some years, buying apartments, crushing it. He's done almost $500 million in apartments, right? And I have wanted to get into multifamily for a long time. And I, like you mentioned at the beginning, my experience is in single family. So we've done, 1,000 or so between renovations and new construction. So it's quite a few. But Trey brought something totally different. And when he and I were talking, I was like, hey, Nathan, you do a really great job of communicating this stuff on social. You do a great job on generating relationships and connections. And so, like, what can we do here? And Trey is an unbelievable operator, and he has internal property management, and he has insanely low, they have 97% occupancy. And he was telling me on his 488 unit, they had $60 was what was past due. Yeah, he's insane. He's an insane operator. And so he's like, hey, and as we were talking, we're talking about like, okay, specifically, Nathan, what can you do? Specifically, Trey, what do you do?
Yeah.
And we got to have much more clear conversations about it, just because we were actually talking about specifics.
Yeah.
Like, this is actually what we're doing. This is actually the goal. And now we can actually get in our lanes and run. And, whether you're a big personality or whether you are a high D or whatever, it's like, if you have a mission and the mission is bigger than you, and you have partners who are willing to actually be collaborative and stay in the lanes, then I think that's where it's like you get rocket fuel.
Yeah, agreed. All right, before we get back to your story, one thing we do on the show is we have an ad sponsor every week where all the profits from the show go towards a charity of the guest choosing. So we're going to roll the ad for this. Before we do, where are we sending the money from today's episode?
I love this. And you gentlemen should come and do this with me and a good buddy, Eric Upchurch. He didn't go on the last trip, but Eric is a dear friend, Special Forces veteran. He's on a mission. By the way, boys, it's $350 million to end veteran homelessness in the country. $350 million. And Eric is on a mission to help solve this. And he is on the board now of Veterans Community Project. I live in Kansas City. It's actually a Kansas City local, it started in Kansas City, but now all over the country. So they built tiny homes. And Eric and I have been on the side of a mountain together a few times. And I was with him, and I sprained both my ankles on this trip doing 170 miles hiking, but I made it almost 80 miles. But we raised 190 grand for Veterans Community Project. They're amazing. And so this money is going to Veterans Community Project. So shout out to VPC and to Eric Upchurch and to all of the freaking men and women who serve in our country, and that we should be taking care of them.
Yeah.
And so,
yeah, we had him on the podcast. We talked a lot about it. It was awesome.
Yeah, super good dude. Mm-hmm. I was just at his event, the Active Duty Passive Income Conference. Yeah, it was awesome. Yeah. All right, man. Well, I appreciate that. Let's roll the ad. All right, so picture this. I just signed a lease with a tenant. They seem great on paper. Then a few months in, everything kind of started going sideways. Suddenly, they're missing rent deadlines, there's a broken window, the neighbors are complaining about them. I realized I'd put someone in my rental property without properly screening them, and now I was living a landlord's nightmare. But lucky for you, you don't have to make the same mistakes as I made early on because you have the luxury of using TurboTenant. So if you're managing any rental properties right now, and you're still trying to vet tenants and collect rent and keep track of work orders and market all your vacancies, look, TurboTenant is going to be your best friend. It's an app that allows you to do all of that and so much more, all in the same platform. Plus, it's like stupid cheap, like seriously less than your Netflix subscription. I don't even know why it's so cheap. And if you want it even cheaper, I got a discount for you. Just go to turbotenant.com/betterlife and use code Brandon10 for 10% off. Or go to my Instagram and DM me the word toolbox, and I'll send you a link to a bunch of cool free tools that they have, like the rent estimator, financial freedom calculator, and more. Hey, so many of you have heard me tell that story about how I bought my daughter Rosie a fourplex, like a rental property, the week she was born, and how we put it on an 18-year, mortgage payoff plan so it'll be paid off when she graduates from high school. So essentially, my tenants are paying for Rosie's entire college. Now that's pretty awesome, right? Not to mention, it's also making almost like $1,000 a month in cash flow. That's double awesome. But I don't think I've ever shared really exactly how I found that deal. So here goes. I found it through direct mail marketing. And here's how. I simply built a high quality lead list of a lot of names and addresses of potential sellers, and I sent out a whole bunch of mail to every person on that list. And then I talked on the phone to a ton of people, and then I finally got one person that was interested enough to sell me the property, and I got a deal at a great price. So building that giant lead engine like that, I mean, it works, but it takes a ton of time, knowledge, and effort, which can really slow down an investor's growth, which is why I reached out to my friend Ryan with Ballpoint Marketing. I asked him to sponsor this show because they're the best at doing everything that I just talked about. Like, they're literally going to help you build your entire lead engine. You're gonna get a one-on-one call where they're gonna help you figure out what you want and then build your lead list for you. Their robots are going to handwrite the postcards with a real pen, which is super cool. They're gonna send them out, and they'll even answer the phone calls for you. Plus, they'll help you track it all inside of a CRM that they create for you. I know, it's crazy, crazy awesome. And it's going to help you land way more deals consistently. And because you're awesome and because you listen to this show, you're going to get a discount when you tell them that I sent you, or just use code Brandon when checking out with them. I love Ballpoint Marketing and officially recommend them to all my friends and masterminds. So if you're ready to kick your deal flow up a notch, getting more quality leads without pulling your hair out, just go to ballpointmarketing.com/betterlife. Or just shoot me a DM on Instagram with the word ballpoint, like one word, ballpoint, and I'll hook you up with them directly.
All right, back to your story. So you find this partner. That was the longest. Like, what did Trump call it? A wandering or something like that. Like,
Wandering.
You're telling a story, and you just like, just come back to it. That was long. That was
Great
long.
math.
Yeah, long loop. But coming back, you found this partner. You got into real estate. What'd you do?
Oh man,
2 houses first day.
2 houses.
Actually,
first day.
so that's the question. This is the first deal question, by the way.
Yeah,
We'll go there. Firstdeal.com, brought to you by firstdeal.com. First deal question. I like that. It's like a sporting event. It's like time for the Valvoline halftime show. It's time for the firstdeal.com first deal question.
You nailed that.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really good at this. Tell us what your first deal.
How did you fund 2 deals just starting out?
Okay,
Tell us a story.
this is so bad. So I'm meeting with this guy, and I'm not even gonna use his name. This is not he's not worthy of this at all. So the shyster partner, quote unquote, I'm in business. So I now go meet with the shyster bank, which when I look back and now I have experience with banks and funds, and we've raised lots of money and we've done lots of deals. The guy he's the owner of the bank. He's the signatory of the loan at the bank, and he's the guy who underwrote the loan at the bank. And then had me sign all the docs at the bank. So every step of the process is the same guy, same signature, and same things. And so somehow I get approved for a loan with them, which is immediately basically what I realized later, which was this guy is the partner is actually about to fail, and so I'm brought in to now be the scapegoat. Correct. And And they're both like 100-year-old houses. And again, I've flipped these many times now, and I don't really do them very often anymore unless there's a huge margin, because guess what? They're a nightmare.
Yeah.
And so literally he shows up a couple days, very little gets done. Contractors aren't really showing up. And then all of a sudden he starts missing like whole days. And then, but he always showed up on Fridays, which is when the banker would show up with a certain amount of cash for me to pay for the contractors and for him. And he would have his hand out and say, hey, I'm a partner of the deal. So this goes on for weeks and weeks and weeks. And all of a sudden he doesn't show up at all. And I have these 2 giant houses, and I'm trying to work through them, and I'm trying to figure out what to do. And I now have made relationships with a couple of the guys from the, day labor thing, and they're starting to come work for me every day. And actually, for what it was, when I look back, they were pretty great guys, and they worked really hard. And we basically ran at 100% of our capacity of what we knew what to do. Mm-hmm. But and somehow in the midst of this, I go and buy more houses, which is, I have a saying now, which is don't compound your problem. Well, or don't compound your chaos. Well, I compounded my chaos like 10x. And so this doesn't get any better. The houses still continue to go. And guess what? We're heading into this time period called 2009, 2010.
Yeah.
And eventually these houses and this banker, I'm actually in LA making a record. I have somebody who's invested in my music stuff. So I'm flipping houses and I'm doing music still at the time. And I get a phone call that's like, hey, we got this package that showed up, and there's a lawsuit with your name on it in this property. So I reach out, I try to find out about it. Come to find out, this banker has now reached out to my tenants before they've taken back any properties. They are now collecting rents on my behalf. Mm. And they basically force us into bankruptcy. And so December of 2009, we filed for bankruptcy, chapter 7, which is basically when you push all of your monopoly chips in. And I go from owning, 7 figures in real estate to nothing.
Dang. What was your home life like during that point? You were married at that point, I'm assuming.
I was married.
What was she saying?
I talk about this in the book some, and I remember walking in there. Well, first of all, I'd been doing some real estate deals at the time because I'd moved from Kansas City to Florida to take a job as a worship leader in a church. And so I have this like back and forth between real estate and music in various capacities. And so I remember I'd been in this attorney's office many times, and except I'd been helping other people. Mm-hmm. So we were helping in the short sale like craze of those days, remember? So you could put something under contract, and we were doing all these creative things with helping people and making money. Well, I remember walking into his office saying like, he's like, hey, what's up, Nathan? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
This is from me today. Like, and I remember, and by the way, I have goosebumps. So I'm just like, it makes me sick to think about it. And I remember, so we go through all the paperwork, and at the end of that meeting, there's this like peace, because you're like, oh, I'm in bankruptcy. They can't call you anymore. All the things are okay. Well, guess what? Then you have the meeting with the trustee. So you go and show up at court. And I'm a lighting guy. I love lighting. I love, great spaces. Well, it's the epitome of a terrible lighting situation. So you walk in and it's like, well, Dr. Death is here, and they're awaiting your arrival. And it's all those, those lights that have that sound, you can hear like, yeah. And so they walk up, and I've had this meeting with the attorney and beforehand, and like, okay, here's the things to say, and I had nothing to hide. I have no money, no nothing, no, watches or whatever, but I have one prized possession, which is my guitar that my wife had bought for me when she was still my girlfriend working at this guitar shop. And I'm like, just don't take my guitar. I have nothing else. And like, we're sitting at the table, and there's another attorney on a phone plus this person. And luckily I get to keep my guitar, but it was horrifying. And I felt like I ruined my wife's life, and I ruined our lives. And, it was horrific.
Did she blame you? Did you guys fight about that? Was that you ruined our life kind of a thing, or was she?
No, I think it was more this desire for me to make this incredible change for our family. And I distinctly remember there's a guy named Rob Zivkovic who's in Cape Coral, Florida. So shout out to Rob. Years later, we're still in Florida, and my wife and I are having this conversation, which is, what do we do about it now? And I remember distinctly, she's like, you really want to do this? Like, I don't know about this. This is a good idea. You know, we've already been through this pain once. I'm like, how can we possibly say no with all of what we have learned and all the pain we've gone through and not do it?
Yeah.
And I remember distinctly, have you ever, by the way, anybody ever asked you to go for a coffee? I'll take you for a coffee. I'll buy your lunch. And at the time I was like, hey, Rob. He had owned a property management company, owned a real estate company. And so I harassed this guy, And finally I get to take him to lunch, and it's like $20 lunch or something. And at the time I was like, oh man, I hope this runs. Like, I hope this card goes through. And he like lays out his business, and he was my first money lender on a house on Harmony Drive in Kansas City, Kansas, that I bought like 3 years later. And so I think, when I think back on the story, things happen, right? And all those lessons are parts of me that I can't pay to earn. I had to, or pay to learn. I had to earn them in my life. And so instead now, when I think about that house and I think about the many homes after, I had the hardest times, but then I also, how bad did I want it? And how bad did we work to get it? And then who came alongside us in life all the time, right? And this is for everybody. If you are listening to this, like, how bad do you actually want it? Mm-hmm. And so, that is part of my life experience. And to be able to say, like, guess what? I get to be the Rob sometimes now, to come alongside new people. And I get to also help from a leadership standpoint and say, like, let's not go down this road.
What advice do you have for people who are listening who want to find that Rob? They want to find the mentor, this person to take them under their wing. Like, how do you find that person? How do you trust that person? How do you work with that person?
I have had a love-hate relationship in the coaching space. I've been a part of multiple masterminds, and I actually run my own mastermind now. It's a city-based mastermind. So we actually have just people in Kansas City.
That's cool.
And it's so awesome. And we have amazing people. And but I love the part personally of helping people actually who want to help themselves. And I think that the challenge oftentimes is people see something, they see, okay, Brandon, Nathan, they see somebody on social or whatever the pretty thing is that we make life look like, which it's not. Everybody has a life that we just choose our problems. Yeah. And I always say, don't make money your problem, make your problem your problem. And how many times we hear people say, like, what do I do? How do I get, I don't have the money. And instead it's like, who's solving your problem at a high level? And don't expect a handout. Don't expect somebody to do the work for you, because they're not going to do that. Mm-hmm. And so instead, I find that and go look for somebody who actually is incredible at this and be willing to do the work. Alex Hormozy right now is crushing this, I think, because, in his marketing, and this is something we talk about it later. I'm really thinking a lot about this, which is, how do we as people communicate our brand, and what are all the things, I call them the columns, like, what are the columns we talk about? And one of his is like, hey, if you're not working 12 hours a day and you're not making what you want to, and you're under 30, you're not married, you don't have, like, what are you doing? Like, why are you not out there doing the work? And I bet you, I would put a lot of money that all three of the people at this table I know I have put in those 100-hour weeks. A lot.
Yeah, a lot.
I've had months and months and months in a row where I paid myself nothing, and I ate into my savings, or I leveraged my life.
Yeah.
And guess what? That happens.
Yeah.
That's a part of it. So I bet on me. And so I think those people out there who are listening to this and thinking about that, and they're wondering, like, what in the world do I actually do? Guess what? I want you to pull out a piece of paper right now. I want you to write down exactly what you want it to look like. People are like, I want a big house. I'm like, what color is the door? How big is it? Square feet, beds, baths, where is it located? What street? Like, write it down. You want a big business? Cool. Tell me about it. Be specific, because the more specific we are, the more easily that our brains can understand it, and the more easily we have create a path to get there. And so write it down and then create action steps. And every single day you write down in the morning, it's what I do. 3 things of gratitude, 3 things of focus. What am I doing today that actually gets me to that problem? What am I actually doing with my time?
That's powerful, man. It so often, like, I will look at something that I want. Like, for example, I'm buying a rent by the room, like a pad split property for my son right now, where I want to pay it off over 15 years, cover his college, right? And I'll like take little action steps, you know, to move the ball down the field, so to speak. But sometimes I look and I'm like, I haven't done anything in a week. Like, I had a call a week ago, and now all of a sudden it's Tuesday again, and I'm like, oh shoot, I haven't done anything in 7 days to get closer to the goal. And I've got a goal. Why is it taking me 7 days to do that? Like, that's just because I haven't identified it. I'm not doing it every single day. So now a big part of my morning routine now is like every week I write down, like, what's the one thing I got to do this week? And then today is like, what do I got to do today? If I can just drive that ball 3 yards down the field every day, like, I'm going to score a touchdown eventually. If I'm driving only 3 yards a week, it's going to take me 7 times longer to get the result.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and if you also go to the word lead and leadership, like, that might be a situation that you needed to identify a realtor or somebody on your team and said, like, this is the avatar. This is the day I want to buy it. Go find me this house. And then now the responsibility is still there's a management of that. But, you know, that's what I found is where all of a sudden I use the word, you know, or the phrase compounding my chaos. Like, I compound it because I kept holding on to it.
Yeah. There's a great app. It's called the 5-Minute Journal. Have you guys used that or seen that?
Yeah.
It's actually exactly what you just said. It's, you write down 3 things you're thankful for, and then 3 like action items you can do that day to make that day a great day. Takes 5 minutes. You do it every morning. It's awesome. Yeah.
Cool. I found that, I'll go. So I used to use the Best Self Journal.
Yep. I've used that.
And of course you have a journal, which I have used also. And what I found was I like the writing part. And of course the app's great. Doing that is great. And for me, that thing, like, it's just a college ruled notepad.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, guess what? I have a tactile experience now with my desire of what I'm doing. And I've said this a bunch of times now, and it's true, which is there's nothing that I've written down with specificity and with a timeline that I haven't actually accomplished yet. Now, $100 million, sell for $100 million, right? But we have action steps in place. So, of course, I haven't sold the company yet, but we're in process.
So, in the writing of it down is so used. I used to do the 10X journal every morning. Have you guys ever used that?
Yeah.
And I think I might have showed you this, where every morning when I first started real estate, before I ever knew Brandon, I would write down, I want to have $5 million net worth in 5 years, and I want to own a house, because he had like a 5-year goals. I want to own a house in Hawaii, and it's just super cool to see like all. And then there's some other things I wrote down. The one thing that hasn't come true is 10% body fat, but we're gonna get there. Exactly, that has not come true. But you know, we've hit every other goal in that. And it's because I literally for a year, every morning and every night, I would write down the same exact things. And those goals have now changed, and I'm writing down different things. But there is nothing in my life that I haven't like sat down and wrote down every single day that hasn't actually happened, which is crazy.
That's crazy.
One of the interesting things about this, and I posted this on my Instagram the other day, is like I was stressed. We've got within our companies probably 50 or 60 employees, and some of those are salespeople and whatnot. But and just it's been a rough couple months in real estate and the education space and everywhere, and I was just stressed. And I went back into that journal, and I was watching like what I wrote, and I wrote down like, I want to lead people. I want to have pressure. I want to carry like it was insane, where I'm like, I'm actually doing exactly what I wrote down 5 years ago. That was my dream, which was super cool. And like, oh my goodness, like I'm doing it. This sucks right now, but I'm doing what I was praying for 5 years ago.
Isn't there a saying?
Yeah, there's a quote, something like that. Like, yeah, whatever. The life you're living now is the life you dreamed of. Yeah, 5 years. You prayed for 5 years ago or something like that.
Yeah.
It's so true.
I love that line. And the other thing I like, if you look at it from, say you're in a place that you don't like, It's like the life that you're living is the life you created.
Yeah.
And so you also then can do something about changing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. The speaking of the 10X, so the 10X journal from Grant Cardone, the best self journal, so a lot of people don't know the story, but I'll throw it out there. When I wrote the intention journal for Bigger Pockets, what I did before that is I spent 2 or 3 years, every like 3 to 6 months, I changed to a new journal. I did all of the journals, like everyone out there for like 3 to 6 months, each one. And I did Cardone, I did Best Self, I did all of these.
And element of savers too.
But yeah, exactly. I did the Miracle Morning stuff. And I would circle and write down notes, what I liked, what I didn't like, and how it could apply to real estate investors. So when I made the intention journal, I just combined them all into one journal. Then when I made the Better Life Tribe, I took what I liked about the intention journal, which I liked the habit tracking. I didn't like having to do it every single day, rewrite my goals. I just didn't have time in the morning. So I needed to go quicker. So now it's a weekly one. So when you join the Better Life Tribe or First Deal, you get the weekly, same thing, but you only do it once a week. So now it's like a 30-second journal every morning. I'm just like, check, did I do it? Yeah. And so, yeah, it's an iterative process. But I know guys like David Osborne, who's a friend of mine, runs GoBundance. Like he's been doing just a notebook, college rule notebook for the last like 20 years. And I mean, he's tracking like 100 goals at a time. Like it's just wild. I track 3.
That's a lot.
Yeah. But he's the most successful person I think I personally know. Like just period. Like he's just a rock star, because it's like you write the stuff down, you reverse engineer how to get there, and then you get there. And you just like, again, drive the ball down the field a few yards every single day. And you will just score. Like people think football games are won by Hail Marys, and they're not. They're run by driving the ball 3 yards. It's boring. Just carry the ball. That doesn't get the replays on the late night TV or anything, but that's what wins games.
100%. And actually getting it in the end zone.
Yeah.
Because that's the thing too, is, I remember you thinking about, hey, we're actually in the game right now. Like you are actually in the game right now. So, did you make the phone calls? Did you, what are all the things? And guess what? It actually doesn't matter unless the thing closed.
Yeah.
Unless the loan closed, unless the deal closed, right? And so that was the other thing. And how many times have we had conversations with people in business that, they have some huge top line number, but they're not profitable. They're not profitable. And so that was the other thing too. When we started our lending company, it was like, hey, we're going to serve people in the unbelievable way. Like we're going to utilize technology in an unbelievable way. Yeah. And also we're going to actually make sure this thing is profitable, and that we were talking about this earlier, red light, green light, red light, green light. Do we need to slow down? Do we need to hire more people? Do we need more leads? Do we need more salespeople? Like, what is the actual problem?
Yeah. Beautiful. All right. Go back to your story. What came next? So you started building this thing. You went through bankruptcy.
Yep.
Got back into real estate. Said, we're going to do this right this time.
How long did you take off in between first go at it and second time?
It was a couple of years. Yeah. I'm pretty sure it was 2012 I bought that first house that Rob funded.
Okay.
And so a couple of years go by, I do a handful of properties, a couple dozen. I end up on Bigger Pockets. And because we've now actually closed some deals, we made some money, things have actually started to go better. And I meet my partner, David. And so he flies out. And speaking of negotiation, we have some negotiation on the ownership level of this business. He had much more than I did. We have this fire pit, we're drinking some bourbon, playing guitar, and we're like, boom, we're in business. So we buy a property on Cherry Street. I remember it. We buy a property on Mission, and the intention is to buy and hold real estate. Well, these deals, we're doing some deals, we're flipping some stuff. He learns that I'm absolutely horrific at operations, which I didn't really know how to express at the time. And I've gotten a lot better, but I'm still horrific at operations.
Yeah.
But I have now grown to love people who are great at operations, and the appreciation of all the things that come with it. But so we started doing deals, and I think we did maybe 20 or 30 in our first year. And then we did like 50, 60 in our second year. And then we did, 80 or so, and then 100 and plus. And
so flips or wholesales, both?
Almost all are flips, and we become a turnkey company, which is basically where you buy, renovate, and sell homes to investors who want to buy and hold real estate in their portfolio.
How are you finding your buyers for that?
So unlike almost everyone, including like your business, so you guys are incredible at acquisition. So we never actually had an off-market machine. that we bought and sold or bought stuff from. So all of our stuff, I've been really good at building teams, and I've been really good at figuring out how to lay out a vision. But we bought stuff off market from wholesalers. We bought stuff on market from MLS. And really that was it. I mean, a handful of off market deals that we, got ourselves, but that whole machine, 700 houses over like 6 years, we did virtually all from our acquisition team, not off market.
Would you guys have your in buyers that were buying that turnkey rental, like buy the house with you beforehand? So it was like you were delivering a turnkey product, but they were putting down the down payment, paying for construction. Because I've seen some models like that, or you had the turnkey buyers.
So the very first iteration was like, oh, by the way, I'd love to buy a rental too. And we're like, well, hey, we happen to have this house. Yeah. We can sell it. And then that thing's like gone. Yeah. And then, I end up on Bigger Pockets. We talk about it. And all of a sudden, my phone is literally, figuratively ringing off the hook with people interested to buy. And so we start to, in the early days it was like, hey, John, I got another one. It's a good one. He's like, done, I'll take it. Yeah. And, but you can't shotgun something like that for very long because it's just not good. You can't do business like that. So eventually we would buy it. We looked at, quote unquote, shaving days. So how many days can we shave from the date that we acquired or under contract to having full scope of work and all that stuff, and then close it. And then how fast can we have it in construction? And then how fast and clear can we have, great renovation, on time, on budget, and on quality. And, it's a really difficult thing to do that volume of construction. And it's also really difficult to keep people happy. Yeah. And, what I found was, no matter what product we created, it was difficult for people to understand that things still happen in a house. And years later, it's like my roof leaked or, whatever. So when I look back, I would have kept half of those things, which would have added another 0 to my net worth and, or multiple. And so I would have sold many less, and I would have built it smaller and not as fast. But we had at the time, I think probably, 20 employees, and we had a big office, and we had an incredible team, an incredible brand. And it just became a thing that, much like I've talked about earlier, which was we had a huge gross number, but we had a very small net number because it wasn't working and functioning. We weren't buying deep enough. We, on and on.
Mm-hmm. You're not doing turnkey anymore though, right?
We are not.
So does that model just not work anymore? Do you think?
I know of some people that still do very well in turnkey. I think mainly in the new construction space. And actually I know an operator in St. Louis who does it. That's still.
What's his name?
Jimmy.
Yeah, no, Jimmy Vreeland.
He's a stud. Yeah. Jimmy's a stud, also veteran. So shout out to Jimmy.
Yeah.
I ran into Jimmy in an airport in Utah going skiing. He and his family, they're amazing. But I think overall you can still do turnkey, but you need almost all the people I know are doing new construction. And, the old model of when we would say like a 1% rule or, all the things we talked about in the late teens on podcasts and things like this, they just don't exist. Yep. It's just not there.
Yeah. Not when interest rates are 7% and construction's doubled.
No. And the other thing is I remember having these conversations with turnkey buyers, and if you're an investor out there and you think about this, and all the guys in the room here own rentals, on varying degree of,
I don't own 13,000.
me neither, not even close. But yeah, I own 85 doors. So that's what I own. And I have watched this consistently where, well, actually it's a good friend of mine. His name is David. He's worth, north of 20 million. That dude, he said to me, one of those long conversations where you have with good friends that you're like, man, this would have been a podcast. Yeah. And he says, I made almost all my income on active activity, and I made almost all of my net worth holding real estate.
Yep. Yeah.
And so how many times do we have this conversation with people and they're like, I'm going to buy 10 rentals. I'm going to retire my wife. I'm going to, I'll be set. And I'm like, guess what? It just doesn't work like that. It just doesn't work like that. Yeah. And so now when I think about people buying, I'm like, I call it the cash machine. I want you to have your cash machine. I want it to run. Don't quit your job. Build your cash machine. put some cash in the bank and start buying real estate and having two parallel things running.
Yeah.
What's cash machine? What do you mean?
I look at that as like, so for instance, my cash machine, I have a retail agent team. So we buy and sell homes for investors and mom and pops. You know, I have a lending company. I have a mastermind, right? We have all these different things. Those are cash machines. If you have a W-2 job, your job is your cash machine.
Yeah.
If you own a construction company, that is your machine. And so when I started my mastermind, I had all these guys like, hey, I want to get in real estate. I'm like, whoa, hold on. I want you to too.
Yeah.
But don't like your cash machine over here is your, roofing company and you're making $500,000 a year. Don't stop that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about leadership. Like you can replace yourself. You can, make $100,000 less and get a killer who's, helping you grow that company. And then let's take $100,000 a year and invest it into real estate.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I talk more entrepreneurs out of real estate than into it. That was different if you're a fireman or a teacher making $45K a year and you're like, I have no way of growing this. Okay, fine. Then we need to talk about how to build a business.
Yes.
Could be flipping, could be wholesaling, could be a dog walking business. I don't really care.
Yes.
You need a cash machine though.
Yes.
And if it's in real estate, I like being in real estate because then you can share the leads. So like you can cherry pick the best ones and all that. I think that makes sense. But also if you've got a passion for something that's not real estate, make money there and then dump it into real estate in the most passive way you can.
Yes. Well, and the other question is, oftentimes, and I'm so guilty of this too, which is all of a sudden an idea becomes a business, but a business, we often don't identify it as a business. So how many times do we say like, oh dude, let's buy that. Oh, well, guess what? Another set of books, another LLC, another thing to manage, another, all of these things that we talked about, guilty.
Yeah.
And so instead I'm like, okay, well, guess what? What if you just, you buy that into, you're not trying to have off-market acquisitions. You're not trying to build a construction company. You're not trying to PM, project manage yourself or be property management. Like buy a house, bank it, move on.
Yeah.
That's it.
How would you tell somebody that is only making $70,000 a year and that's not a ton of money, and they don't have the money to put a down payment on a house. They don't have the money they can't save to buy a house, or if they can, it's every 5 years or 10 years.
Well, I love this question. And I think when we think about, and I'm 99% sure this is true, the homeowners are 44x more wealthy than renters.
It's insane. Yeah.
It's insane. So
you still have guys like Ramit Sethi out there telling everyone, he's I can teach you to be a rich guy. He's got a show on Netflix. He's like, don't buy a house. Houses are stupid. You shouldn't do it. Or Grant Cardone, don't buy a house. And I'm like,
well, you own a $1 billion complex, and
you don't need a house. You can rent
the
a
last 3 houses that we've lived in, we've made over $150,000 on all 3. I mean, and it's been the last 5 years. We've owned 3 different houses that we've lived in, but every single one we've made over.
Every single house I've made significant money that I've owned.
We just bought our.
Yeah, you'll make $1 million off mine.
Well, the one that we just bought. So I just bought a new house ourselves, and we actually utilized our equity from our old house that doubled in value in 6-7 years to buy our new house. It's like I didn't even come out of pocket with cash for that house. And by the way, we put it into Airbnb, and so that house now that we used to live in, that was a few $1,000s a month mortgage, is now making 5 figures a month as an Airbnb. And so, but back to the question, which is, guess what? If it's in a middle market, for $150,000 or $200,000, you can still buy a house. You can. And you know what? Everybody watches HGTV. They want to go buy the fancy baller house. Guess what? Too bad. So is that. Buy a duplex. Buy a $200,000 duplex and put 3.5% down, or do 5% conventional. That's $10,000. Guess what? Go get a second job. Go drive Uber. Go do Uber Eats. Like, I don't care. Guess what? Every single person here, we figured it out. Go figure it out. Go put $10,000 in your bank account. And it might take you 2 years. And you know what? That's okay. That's great. But you know what? When you have a clear understanding of that goal, that money shows up way faster. Because now you're like, oh, I could go drive 2 more hours on Uber. It's $100. Don't spend the $100. Go put it in your account. And you know what? Create an account. Like, we have a vacation account. We have a travel account. Go create your house buying account and pay yourself go put it in your freaking account.
Yeah.
Right. And then go buy the house. And then you know what? If you have terrible credit, go talk to a guy like me or the people out there. We've seller financed houses. You know, save up your money, find somebody that can seller finance it for you. You still found an avenue to buy the house.
All right, let me have you summarize that we'll call it for the gram.
Okay.
3 ways to buy real estate with no money. What do you do? No or low money, we'll say. What should you do?
I heard there was a book.
There is a great book.
Well, number one, you can have, no or low money. So 3.5% down. You can get FHA. If you're a veteran, you can get 0% down through VA loan.
All right, number 1. That's good.
Yep. Number 2 is you can buy something and renovate it. And so basically burr into something like that. So if you have skills or someone who can help you. So for instance, the house that my wife and I bought that got us, like, it was the first house in this series of homes. We bought it in the low hundreds. We put, 40, 50 into it over 5 years, doing most of it myself. We sold it for almost $300K. And we now had $200,000 to go buy something that we wanted.
Yep.
And number 3 is seller financing. I mean, if you're struggling on the credit, you're struggling on whatever, there are homes out there all the time. You want to make sure it's a legit company. You want to make sure that, you're closing through a title company. You want to make sure you understand the terms of that agreement. But man, I mean, there are really great people out there who do this for you and get in a seller finance deal. Oh boy, the interest rate's a little higher. Too bad. That's the price you pay.
Yeah.
But you can still get into something. And then the little asterisk at the end is go do the work.
Yeah. Well, what's crazy? So we own 65 houses, and the average value is around $250,000 per house that we own. And I just went through every single one of them, looked at what we owed on them, and did the ARV for like this year. Towards the end of the year, I always look at the ARVs and just see how much equity we've gained. And this year, even though it's not been a great year for your real estate, we still added $1.5 million in equity just on those 65 homes.
Not wild.
Unreal.
Yeah. So it's unreal. Yeah. They've all gone up $25,000 in value in 1 year. And the crazy thing is, and I say this to anybody that's watching this, like, if you can buy let's just say two $300,000 houses right now, those, like, with inflation, probably not, but those are both going to be worth $1 million in 30 years.
Oh, yeah. More than that.
Yeah. Like I looked at our portfolio, and I think 2.5% appreciation in 30 years, it'll be worth like $45 million, which is insane because we use $0 to buy those using the BRRRR method.
Yep.
Like, rental ownership is so important.
It is. And you know what? You don't need that many houses either. Like, if you really actually want, say 20, 30 grand a month, you could actually own 10 homes. You're working your job, you have your business, you have your cash machine or whatever, and just pay them down.
Yeah.
Like, it's not, there's so many people like, leverage them all. I'm like, guess what? Just pay them off.
Yeah.
Just pay them off. And you know what? Now you have $20,000, $30,000, $40,000 a month, which even in 20 years, who knows how much that is, but it's a lot more than what you have right now.
Yeah. That is the biggest question for us. So you always talk about return on equity.
Yeah.
Because we have a lot of equity sitting there.
Yep.
And we're only making $100,000 on $7 million of equity sitting there.
Like, which is a terrible return on investment. But there's a return on
the appreciation, right? And what would the calculation be?
Yeah, but you'd get that. I think you cancel that out when you're talking return on equity. I think you can cancel that out because whatever you buy at a higher cash on cash return, you get the same likely appreciation. We're talking 2.5%. So for those who don't understand, just real quick, I'll explain what that is so people aren't lost. Return on equity simply says, hey, if you've got $7 million of equity and you're making $100,000 a year in cash, an actual pure cash flow, like, in your pocket at the end of the year, what did you actually net after repairs, maintenance, vacancy, paying your loan, all that? If you're making $100,000 and you have $7 million in equity, it's like basically 0.07. It's like, it's super small. Watch this. What is $100,000 divided by 7 million?
Well, a million would be 7%.
Oh, it's not even going to do it on the calculator. Okay, whatever.
A million would be 7%. Because 1 million into 7 million would be 7. So it's 1%.
No, 1 million out of 7 would be like 14%, right? 15%.
So it's probably 2%. Let's just say, I think that's probably 2%.
I think it's terrible.
Three.
Yeah, you don't want real estate guys doing math.
I think
now I got to know. All right, hold on. We're going to find this out right now.
It's a very low number.
It's a very low number. The point being, it's
going to be 1.8%.
You think so?
1.8%.
100? I think it's way lower than that. 100,000 by
0.07.
Yeah, I think so too. 7 million. It is. What'd you say it was?
1.8%.
You're actually not that far off. It's 1.4.
1.4%.
So 1.4%.
You could have done that 14.
Now, in reality, now if you want to do a return on equity,
it was painful.
Yeah.
Sorry.
If you want to do return on equity better, you probably don't have 7 million equity. I mean, maybe you do it this way because you have to pay real estate agents.
So I did that. So if I take out 10%,
for real estate fees and closing costs and repairs and all.
But that would be on the total. So it would actually be about 1.5 million because I was taking 10% out of the total like portfolio.
Yeah.
Here's the question I have.
So I'd walk with 5.5. If I sold everything today, I'd walk with 5.5.
So it's more like 2.5% you're probably making.
The question I have is, I gave very much less value to how well do I sleep at night.
Correct. There's a return on equity, there's a return on sleep.
Yeah.
And so that's a balancing act.
The other question is like, I know a handful of people who have say between 50 and 150 homes that are paid off.
Yeah.
And they have no problems.
Yeah.
So they're not asking like, what is my return on equity? They're asking like, oh, guess what? How much does it cost of the new Porsche 911?
Yeah.
Because I want to buy it.
Yeah, there's a time in life where maximizing ROI is important because and then there's a time where you preserve capital.
Yes.
And so like there's a great book out there. It's called Life in Air. Have you read that one? You know that one?
I love Sean McCluskey.
Yeah, Sean McCluskey. I love Life in Air. And they basically make the point of like, if the goal, like the rules you play by should be determined by the goal of the game. So when you play Monopoly a certain way, it's based on trying to get the most money. If the goal of Monopoly was to go around the board as fast as possible, you'd play a different way than if you collected money. Right. So look at life. If the goal of life is to end as rich as possible, then yes, return on equity matters more than anything else.
Yes.
Because you need to maximize your return all the time, get it higher and higher and higher. Mm-hmm. If the goal of life is something else, which I think it is, then we have to play by different rules. And so you can't make rules based on a faulty game premise. And so so return on equity, I do think matters at some level, but sleeping at night matters too. Mm-hmm. But if you were to take that, for example, Cam, if you were to take, this is not a plug for people to invest with me, but if you were to take that entire portfolio, sell the whole entire thing, dump that whole entire thing, let's say 5.5 million into Open Door Capital. We have a fund right now that's paying out 12%, right? Well, let's even go either 10%, where you're getting 10% on that money. You're now making $550,000 a year with zero work whatsoever. Mm-hmm. You don't have tenants anymore. You don't have toilets. You don't have trauma. You don't have a legal liability. You have nothing. And you've 5x'd your cash flow and you 5x reduce the amount of work you have to do. And so that's the benefit of thinking return on equity, ROE, is can I get a better return for less work, sleep better at night, and get higher? Now, the danger is you're now risking all of your investment in Brendan Turner. And if something goes wrong, so I would not give me $5.5 million. I would spread that out with a bunch of people. But as we've seen, syndication's been rough right now. But could you find a way to get 10% on a multifamily that you buy yourself or buy 3 multifamilies? Maybe. So anyway, that's the argument of ROI. I once did this coaching call with a guy a few years ago. We sat down, looked at his portfolio. I've told this story before, but I love this. Sat down and he's explained his goal. He wanted to retire in 5 years or 6 years. We looked at his portfolio, ran his return on equity, figured out he was making a 0.9% return on equity. So I said, so if we sold this one, and this one, and you moved it into this one that can make 8%, you'd be making this much cash flow. And he goes, I could retire this month. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, you just shaved off 5 years. Like, I can retire now. And I'm like, you can. So he did it. He went and sold his properties, redeployed into other assets, and then retired.
Amazing.
And it's like, that's the power of ROE. So anyway, hey, this is a quick plug. It's actually not a plug, it's free. We have a free return on equity calculator that anybody can have. It's just it's a little Google sheet that I'll send you a link to. Go to my Instagram, Beardy Brandon. Beardy Brandon, and then send me a DM and just put one word in there, ROE, just like no spaces, ROE into Instagram, and it'll automatically send you a link to the ROE calculator because I'm such a big fan of it. So
I love this conversation. The other thing I will mention is that the other thing we started doing was buying higher valued properties.
Yes.
And so like in our short-term rental portfolio, I think our average value is like $400,000 to $600,000. I can't remember the exact number. But, you figure, so if you're making a 5% return a year on appreciation, 5% on, 500,000 versus 5% on 200,000, totally different number.
Yeah.
So,
and Well, so the ease of management, let's say you had $5.5 million in equity that you could move somewhere else.
Yeah.
Forget about return on equity for a minute. Let's say you make the exact same. You get another 1.4%, but you do so in a market that is going to appreciate probably better than where you're at, like St. Louis.
But St. Louis doesn't have the swings. So
Correct.
it's safe.
But we're talking over a 20-year period.
Yeah.
Is it better to go put that you can go buy a property for cash in Austin at a 4 cap right now or 5 cap? Is Austin going to appreciate better over the next 20 years than St. Louis or Kansas City or wherever? Maybe. And again, it's a risk, but I would personally rather own a nicer asset in a nicer area. If the ROE is the same either way, like it doesn't really matter. I would want to deploy that in something. Now, there is value in knowing where you're at. Like you know your market very, very well. That's a huge piece too.
Well, speaking of Charlie, we talked about earlier. So like Trey's game has been taking assets that are like a C asset in a tough neighborhood with a tough situation and totally changing and transforming it.
Yeah.
And so I think there's also something really special about being very clear on what you're doing and who you're doing that for and like running in your lane. And how many times have I done something where I am not running in my lane?
Yeah.
And I learned the hard way.
Yeah. Well, and that is super important to us. And I think for anybody that's just starting to look at is the way that we've built our portfolio is we have what you were talking about earlier. We have our active income, which is flipping. And then we've been able to build a pretty large rental portfolio because we just get to cherry pick the rental deals off of that. We already have the construction in-house. We already have the acquisitions in-house. And so we have our active income stream, which is flipping. And then we have our forever money that's going to make us filthy rich off of our rental portfolio. So it works really well. If I was just outside of everything looking at that, I would say, yeah, it makes more sense to live here. But in St. Louis specifically, because we already have that deal flow going, and
it's already here
70%.
Yeah, it's already you already solved that problem. The other thing too is as you scale and buy more stuff and have more cash, you can deploy in other places. And be diversified in that way.
So you've moved over to short-term rentals a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Is all of your portfolio short-term rentals? Or?
No, but anything that we bought recently has either been seller financed or has been short-term rental.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's cool. And then now you're doing new builds.
And we have a development company in Texas, and we're building homes, and that is a cash machine. So that thing does run. We do build them, sell them, and they're affordable. Yeah, we're working in that affordable home.
Build to sell to investors or to homeowners?
We're selling to homeowners.
Okay.
Yeah.
What are you guys building like?
So it's like it's 1,000 square foot to 1,300 square feet homes, and that thing's selling retail for $209,000.
Wow,
that's all out the door, and it's so profitable for us, and so we're actually working on like how do we solve the problem where again, can you actually buy a home? Yes, you can. You can actually find places in the country to go buy a house that's less expensive.
Yeah,
and so that's been our mission. And by the way, over time, I remember thinking early on when people have multiple businesses and you're like, how did they do that? How do you have that? Well, guess what? You don't start doing that. You start with one and you get it to a place where it actually runs without you or 95% without you. And then you go work on another one. And you know what? There are seasons of my life where one business is not doing well at all, but I have other things that actually make money. And, and then of course in the seasons that all of them are, running, it's like, oh man, like this is glorious. But we can start with one.
How do you manage? Because it sounds like you've got a lot. You've got your lending company, your new build company, your short-term rental company, your flipping company, your education company. How do you lead all of those teams well?
Well, I would say that sometimes I don't lead them well. And part of my decision last year or in 2024 was thinking about focus and saying, hey, say no more. Say no more.
Yeah.
And then bring in better leaders and bring in better management or not in this case, I have great leaders, but bring in more people to solve this. And so for me over time has been, how can I make sure that I am removing myself only to the very things that I love them, and then I'm incredible, world class at them. And so that's been my mission. And so we have people in our retail agent team who are incredible at leading our people. And we have a full-time coach that we just hired on. And we have full-time marketing, in our lending company, same thing. We have other leaders within that organization. And then we hire for that too. It's like, we want entrepreneurial minded people. We pay on performance and not just giving them some big giant salary. And in our mastermind, I just brought in one of our members to come in and be a part of our community and leadership team. And I think there's something really scary for people when they are afraid to let go. And so I'm no longer afraid to let go. And instead, it's like, how do I define that where I can bring in people who are actually incredible, better than me at doing that thing. And I'm not afraid, but I also, there's layers to the onion where, hey, you have this much space to operate. Hey, now you have this much space to operate. Hey, now you have this much space. And once you start to create that, it's much easier to let them run.
Love that.
Love it, man. Well, why don't we shift toward the next segment of the show? We call this the 3-2-1 pivot, because there's moments in your life where you're going one direction and something stops it and makes a change in a more positive way. And that's pivot. So 3 books, 2 people, 1 quote. Let's start with the books.
Oh man.
3 books that have changed the direction of your life.
So I'm an avid book reader, and I think that, and I really struggled reading early on. So this is a little pitch for people that if you struggle with reading, audiobooks by far work better for me. And if you increase the speed slightly and go faster and faster until you find a place with my manic mind, you can actually read. And then the little asterisk to that is when I find a book I really love, which we talked about this last night, I actually I do audio first, and then I go back and reread immediately and do the physical book, take notes, and audio. So, and I love books, and I read roughly a book a week. And so I'm actively doing that. So I just read, this is a non-real estate book, but I just read Matthew McConaughey's book, Greenlights.
I love that.
It's so awesome. It's so awesome. And he's such a great storyteller. Go listen to the audio because he reads it. It's fantastic. One of the books that just comes up over and over and over and over and over for me is Never Split the Difference. And I know it's a really, really popular book, but I always try to just take one thing away. And I reread books now. I'm kind of in a season of rereading books that I love. 3 is really difficult, by the way.
Yeah.
But I love that book. And so the thing that I took away was what and how questions. Instead of asking yes or no questions, asking open-ended and removing why often, because it makes people feel like you're attacking them. And if you ask a what and how question, but I mean, there's so many incredible things out of the book that I use all the time.
Very cool.
All the time. Man, the last one. So I'm on a leadership kick. So I'm going to go with extreme ownership and / dichotomy leadership. Jocko, Willink. Those books are incredible. And if you're a leader and you're struggling and you're trying to figure out the path that you're on, that's a very Jocko thing to say. Those books are incredible at helping you actually have real information on how to actually execute something that you want to do.
Have you done the FTX training?
I haven't, but I've heard it's incredible.
Oh, it's so good. Yeah. It was
amazing.
It was like over $100,000 for the day for like the team, but like it was, but I mean, broken up at 20 people, it was like $5,000 a person, but it was phenomenal.
Top. Anyway, everything that those guys do. It's
top.
just,
I thought it was going to be the corniest thing ever.
Yeah,
it was like a bunch of 30, 40-year-old guys out there with laser tag guns and
it was
like acting like they're in war. And it was so amazing. Yeah.
I'm going to have to do it.
Yeah,
you should. All right. Two
pivot people.
2 pivot people. So that's like impactful to me. Man. Well, I would say one is there's a gentleman by the name of Gary Harper. He runs a great company called Sharper, and they've coached like 4,000 businesses. And Gary's a wonderful human being. And when you do core values, you write down people that are most impactful and what are the things that you use to describe them. So that's, by the way, how you do a core value exercise. You don't just say like integrity, great, pull it off the wall. So Gary has been instrumental in just coaching me, and I've got to be, for some period of time helping coach in his organization. And he helps now in our mastermind, and he's a stud and a incredible human being. And he has a very clear mission too, which is he works to give money away for his faith, and he talks about it all the time. And so I love people who put it out there and do it. Man, 2 is hard. I would say, honestly, well,
that's what she said. Sorry. I was like, do I say this? I don't know. Is this too inappropriate? Probably.
Yeah.
Keep going.
I don't know how you always have to say it.
Yeah, I know. I was struggling.
Michael, I didn't want to seem silly on the podcast, but dude, Brandon, you've been a massive impact for me.
Thanks,
and
man.
You've been one of those people I put on my core value list too. And I'll say, and not in, I'm on your podcast and getting to hang out with you, but when I think about like the biggest moments of my life, especially in my business life, were moments around you. And I like how you show. I like how you set big vision, but also have created such a platform for people to be connected and have relationships. And so when you were like, hey, do you want to come jump on the podcast and, fly to Maui? And, and of course I'm like, yeah, dude, we'll just name the day, because I'll show up for you any day.
Thanks, man. Awesome. Yeah. Appreciate that.
I'm convinced you have that question in there just so people.
No, nobody ever says that. Nobody ever says to me, but I appreciate that. Quote. What's a quote you live by?
Okay. So I have a handful of quotes. So you said one, but I'm going to give you 2. So there's one that's Jerry Rice, and it's roughly, I'll do today what others won't, so I can do tomorrow what others can't. I love that quote. It's on my whiteboard. The other one is the Theodore Roosevelt, and it's long, but it's the Man in the Arena quote, which is basically like, here's the man with the blood on his face, and who's actually in the arena, who actually through blood, sweat, and tears, even if he doesn't win, daring greatly to versus the man who never actually showed up, never understood the feeling of winning or defeat.
Yeah, I love it. All right, man.
Love that. All right, next segment, the past, present, future. We're going to your past, your present, and your future. So let's go back to 20-year-old Nathan. What advice would you give him as he's starting his journey?
Man, slow down. It's okay. Learn more about yourself and become better and better at loving yourself. Because the more, I recently actually started and with a therapist for the first time in my life. And, one of the interesting things was, as I'm talking about some issue, he's like, oh, guess what, Nathan, let me paint the picture for you. And his name is Gary. He's going to love this. So I tell this story and we laugh in sessions together. And he's like, the court is like, they're wrong, Nathan, you're right. And all the people have gathered and they're all, clapping and shouting like, Nathan's right. And then it's like, so now what? You still have to deal with yourself. And of course I sit there and I'm like, crap, you're right. And so, I think that when we think about the 20-year-old self, actually learn more about yourself.
Yeah.
So I like spend more time being okay with being you, and then spend more time getting better as a person. And then, have a clearer and more singular goals, because, I definitely spent a lot of time being a squirrel all over the place. And, it's definitely been a challenge in my life, but also I've had a lot of great adventures. So it's hard not to, appreciate that too. But
yeah, that's true. What's a habit, action, or trait, routine, product, something you've done in the last year added to your life that's made your life better?
Well, I definitely, it's not just this year, but years and years, writing that 3 things of gratitude, 3 things of focus. Yeah. And then a book a week. Like, it's not that hard to get through a book a week, especially if you're doing Audible, unless it's like a 15 or 20 hour book. And you know what? Then it's 2 weeks. No big deal.
Yeah.
But, and the other thing is I walk almost every day. So I walk, 3 to 5 miles a day. And that's been a huge, it's thinking time, it's physical time, and it's also good for your body, mind, and soul.
Yeah. Beautiful. Awesome. And then the last question for you, what do you want your legacy to be?
I think about this, and I want people to had a better life because of me. I want them to have made the difficult choices because of me. I want them to have, not because I was somehow smarter or somehow wiser, it's because I showed up for them. And so like in the mastermind or with our teams or with the people we serve in, the various companies or, buying a $209,000 house, like I want you to know that I cared.
Yeah.
And that our mission wasn't just to make money. It was actually to make an impact. And that it matters how we show up for people.
Yeah. Dude, awesome. All right, let's wrap things up. First question, what are you excited about in your life coming up?
Oh, man.
What's happening?
You know what? I'm rolling into a season of life where for the first time, we're actually making a lot more money than we have before. And so there's a lot of things that I've had in that, like I'm looking forward to doing that we're actually now not thinking about it, we're taking action on it. I'm looking forward to solving questions and problems in my family, which is like, hey, do we want to go travel? We've talked for years about, traveling for a month or two at a time. And so we're actually working on that and actually solving that problem, which, and by the way, I want to be a dad when my kids are, they're 13 and 10, when they're 14 and 11 and on and on and on, that they still want to hang out.
Yeah.
And they still want to do that. And so I want to be a better dad and a better husband. And then, I'm looking forward to just building really cool stuff.
Yeah.
And growing as a leader, growing as a business man and entrepreneur, and saying no more and yes to the right things and just crushing it.
Awesome. Love that. Where can people find you at?
So all the socials are Nathan Brooks REI. That's made it simple. And Arch Capital is our lending company, and we have all those other things. You can find them out there, but we love connecting with people. I love connecting with people on Facebook, Instagram is the main two. And that's
cool.
Yeah.
All right, man. Let's get you. You're awesome. Thank you.
You guys too.
Three-way. Boom.
And that, my friends, is the show. Thank you for tuning in. And hey, before you go, if you enjoyed this episode or if you just enjoy the show in general, please consider leaving us a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. We really do value your feedback, and we read the comments. We make future decisions about topics and guests and everything else. Plus, it helps us reach more people, and the more reviews we get, the more people hear it and watch the show and share it, and it's awesome. Last but not least, please head over to social media. Consider befriending me, following me, subscribing to all that stuff at Better Life and my personal page at Beardy Brandon, especially over on Instagram, YouTube, and really everywhere else. So thank you again for listening. I'm honored that you would bring me along on your journey toward building wealth through real estate investing without losing your soul. Now, this show is about living a better life, but if you want my opinion on what it takes to live the best life ever, just go to abetterlife.com/best life to hear some of my views on life and spirituality. I think you'll like it. abetterlife.com/best life. With that said, thanks for listening to the show. We'll see you next week.